So hello, in this tutorial we will talk about spline animations. How does it work, what types of animations we have, what triggers this animation, and what does it mean, states and event. Let's understand the spline animation logic first. In spline, you can animate objects' properties. For example, you want to make an animation when this ball is moving to the right, like this. So the first position is where the ball starts in the animation, and the next one is finishing. These positions in spline calls states. The process which happens between is transition. So the first state, or correctly would be to say basic state, is a default state of your object. Any other states should have any property changed. It could be position, size or scale, rotation, materials value, for example color, object value, for example corner radius. So to make animation, first of all you need to create states for your object. To do that, select your object and in the object panel click plus on the state section. As soon as you click, you will see already two states, the basic and the new state. So look at the basic state as the first state of your animation, like first frame, like something before, and every next state would be after. So you have selected your object, you have added a new state, and when this new state is selected, now you can change your object properties you want to animate. For example, I want this rectangle moved to the right. In the beginning, in the basic state, the rectangle is positioned in the center. So for the next state, I will move my object to the right. Now, while switching between states, I can see what I have with my object. And now I want to see the animation itself. But if I press play scene, I wouldn't see any animation. Because in spline, for animation, you need to have a trigger, something what will run your animation. And in spline, it calls event. So while my object selected with states, I have another one section, event. To add event, click on this plus icon. By default, spline creates a start event. But you already can see there are a lot of different events. So what we have now? We have added event, which is start. This event means run your animation as soon as you will play your scene. But we need to finish one last thing. We have states of our object, and we have the event which can run our animation. Now we need to link it together and set the action. Otherwise, we can say, when I start my scene, I want transition, animation, sound, video, and etc. This list is a list of actions can happen with event. We need the transition. So we will set transition action for our start event. Let's continue and click on this action. Here we have target is object we want to animate. We have added event for our rectangle. So here we see our rectangle. That is correct. But event for one object also could work for another object. Then we have transition section. Here we will set our animation. So the first step is a basic state. Let's click on this drop down and switch the basic state. And the second is our next state, which is already set. For clarity, I can change the name of the state here, double click to activate input, let's call it step 2. So now we see that our animation is what happened from basic state to step 2. How do you think what we have between states? Look at our example again. What happened with our ball? Yes, it changed the position. But how does it do it? At what speed? Fast or slow? Sharply or smoothly? Between states, we need to set timing and easing. Timing. Here we set how much time should pass between states. Or in other words, how long does it take for an object to transit from one state to another? By default, it's 1 second. So our rectangle will move to the right for 1 second. But what about this? This is easing. The easing is a curve with which you can set the speed of animation playback within a given time. Our rectangle will complete the animation for 1 second, but how it's gonna move while this second? Look at this example. The car starts slowly, then speed up, and then it slows down smoothly. Now look at this example. Car just starts and stops. In both examples, the duration of animation was 1 second, but first car moved more interesting, more natural. So the difference are in easings. The first animation has smooth beginning and smooth ending. In other words, easy in and easy out. The curve of this animation looks like this. And the second one, where car moved with the same speed in the beginning and in the end of the animation, the easing here is linear. And this is a curve. So easing is focusing on in and out parts, start and end of the animation. Should animation start smoothly and end sharply, or vice versa. So the different easing are create different animation. You can check this nice example of animations with different easings, but the easing type is depends on your artistic intent, your goals. But for good result, it's quite important to set correct easing. So let's move back to our rectangle. By default, we have easing in out, which means our animation will smooth in the beginning and ending. You can click here and find out another one option window, where you can change the easing type: linear, easy, easy in, easy out, easy in out, and custom and sprint. If you select custom, you can set the chart by yourself. It's quite hard in the beginning to understand the easing chart. But what I can recommend you is to find examples, like I shared before, and copy paste this value so then you can bring interesting easing into your animation. Before go to the next section, let's check our animation. So what we have set it. By start, when we will play our scene, we want our rectangle change the state from the basic to the step 2 for 1 second. Let's play it. And again. It works. Now let's add more changes. Select our object and be sure we have selected the second state, our step 2. Now I want our rectangle with moving to the right change its color. So I just apply new color here in the material section. And again, I'm changing the color not just of the rectangle, but for rectangle in the second state, not in the basic. So while switching states, we quickly can see the difference. I press play again and see my animation. But what if I want my rectangle after this animation have another animation? For example, after moving to the right and changing color, I want it rotates. So I need add another one state here. Basic state is our rectangle in the beginning of its transition. Then we have this state, and now let's add new state. I will rename to step 3. So on third state, I want to change rotation of my rectangle, so I just will rotate it here. Let's rotate it to 180 degree by that axis. If I switch between state 2 and 3, I don't see any difference, but I can see that in rotation row for that we will have a change. Now let's check event and action, click on our trigger, start. Our animation will set it for 2 states, basic and a second state. Let's add a third by clicking this plus icon. And by default, Spline already set my third state, and what we see here is a result. For the first second, my rectangle will be animated from basic state to the second, and then next second from the second to third. So we have 2 animations in 2 seconds. Good. My animation starts play as soon as I press play button. If I select my animation, I will see the segment section. Here I can set delay. So for example, I want my animation plays after first second after I press play. So then we have a delay. My animation plays once, but what if I want to play it multiple times? So then I can set the loop. Count how many times I want it to be played. Or infinity, if I set infinity, my animation will be played all the time. And if you have your animation in the loop, you can also select circle type, none, and your animation will always replay from the start, from basic state, like this. Or ping pong, and then you will have something like rewind in the opposite direction every time, like pendulum. So now we have an animation which starts automatically as soon as we will play our scene. But what if I want my object to rotate continuously and smoothly? Yes, I just need to add the infinity loop, but here one last thing. To make animation in case like that continuously and smoothly, we need to set a linear easing type. So our object will rotate always with the same speed, like this. In Spline, there are a few events which can start your animation. We can change start event, click on start event here, and here select this drop down. So for example, we can select event mouse up. Mode repeat each time. So I need press mouse, and as soon as I unpress mouse, the animation begins. So to set the animation of the object, you need states, event, which will trigger your object to change states, and action, which will link event with states and make this transition. And animated could be every object in the viewport, every, even camera and light. Everything what at least has a position, scale and rotation rows. But to be completely honest, to have some animation in Spline we don't need states, because some events generated their own animation, or better to say, interactions. For example, drag and drop event. With this option you can activate drag and drop control, so you can select object on this scene and move it. Drag and drop nice event and could be useful. I'm not using it a lot, but if you want to know more about drag and drop event, you can watch this official Spline tutorial or check this Spline project in the library. Then we have a look at, simple but impressive event. Object with this event will turn the center to the cursor, like that. So with this event you can make some nice interaction. So you can see that this object doesn't have any states, it has only event, look at, and below we have some settings. Target is at what your object will look, by default cursor. So your object look at cursor. But you also have options, look at camera, personal camera and directional light. In case with personal camera or any camera you will have, your object will always look at the camera, and if this camera will change their position, object will follow the direction. Could be helpful if you want fix your object and not rotate it while rotating camera. For cursor target, we have plane, which most of the time will be aligned with camera, and plane distance. By default, it's 1000, so this distance is something like sensitivity. The less this number, the sensitive your object to cursor. Damping is a mix of speed and reaction, how fast your object will react on cursor. With look at event, you can make animation like this. Next we have a follow event. With this event, you can imitate a mouse cursor, for example. Here we can select a target which your object will follow. So like in the look at event, it can be not only cursor. And it also has plane, damping and offset, which is something like a distance. So for example, you can have this interaction. Here we have 4 spheres. All the spheres have the follow event. The big one follows cursor, while every next sphere follows previous one. If I select an event, in action list I can see animation action. In Spline you can import 3D model with setted animation. For example, it could be animated character with animation like walk, jump and etc. So this animation is about object animation you import into your scene. Then here we have the sound action. So with event you can not only animate your object, but also play some sounds. You can select sound from the Spline library or import your own, but be sure it in MP3 or WAV format and weighs not so much. Then we have the video action, which works in paid Spline version as because this set the video material layer. We went back to some options in the next video, but for now let's summarize what we have learned. This simple animation in Spline consists of the object states, before and after, trigger, which is event, and transition action, where you set timing and easing. The event could be start, mouse interaction, or keyboard interaction. Some events don't need states of the object because they generate their own animation or interaction like drag and drop, look at, or follow. For good looking animation, you need to know not only how to set the animation in Spline, but also some principles of animation. I want to recommend you this set of tutorials about 12 basic principles of animation from Alan Becker Tutorials channel. It's definitely worth it. In the next video, we will practice some most popular animations in Spline. See you!